The Emerald Knight, Chapter 4. When he was a child, Clin had lived in a castle. That was incompatible with the fact that when he was a child, Clin had lived in a simple cottage on a farm near the capital town during the growing season, and in a cabin in the sacred woods during the off-season. It was so incompatible that it caused him a great deal of distress when his mind tried to reconcile the difference, so he mostly ignored it. So he didn't respond when the servant with the tray of wine and glasses tried to give it to him by offering it to the king. "Your Majesty," the servant tried, and Clin stared ahead, lost in his own thoughts. "Your Majesty," the servant tried again, and felt that the king was ignoring him. "Clin!" Arinda snapped, and his eyes darted toward her. "Are you paying attention?" He felt someone just behind him to the left, and the servant sat the glass in front of him and filled it. He stared at it for a few seconds before he registered it. "Thank you," he said quietly, and asked, as if the servant had the power to ignore him, "Will you please leave the bottle?" But the servant didn't hear him. He was gone, setting glasses and filling them for the three other people at the table. When he was finished, he returned to fill the glass that Clin didn't remember drinking, so the king could have asked again, but he thought that the silence had been an answer, so he didn't, and the servant retreated to the invisibility his position afforded him. Clin tried to sip slowly, because he felt his wife's eyes boring into him. "I'm fine," he answered her unasked question, because he didn't know it was a lie. "Leave him alone." Morgan looked up from the map when he saw that Arinda was about to speak. "I'm proud of him for keeping his head up. As long as he doesn't pass out on the table, I consider that a victory." "Whatever," Arinda said, and stood. "The lake by the sacred woods is our topic of conversation. The water nymphs sense the weakness caused by the shift in power, and are attacking the townsfolk. These nymphs possess the telepathic powers common to such magical races, so unless the threat is neutralized, we risk an all-out attack from the sea." "I'm on it." Clin drained his second glass and stood. "What do you mean, you're on it?" Arinda asked, at the same moment that Morgan ordered in his most commanding voice, "Clin, sit your ass back down and have another drink." Clin obeyed the command, and the servant reappeared to fill his glass. "I'm talking to you!" Arinda narrowed her eyes at him, and his mind frantically tried to remember what he was supposed to be doing. He cowered under her gaze and muttered an apology into his drink. Morgan sighed and looked at Anilla, who said nothing, and sat still, her scales glistening in the sunlight filtering in through the windows. She gave him a grave look in return, and Morgan whispered to Arinda, "He thinks you want him to slaughter them." "I was thinking we could try a more diplomatic approach," Arinda explained, patiently, to her husband who wouldn't meet her eyes. "We need them to know that we are not the threat Xandra was. In fact, I believe that their underwater kingdom could be an asset to Ural." "I'm sorry," he said, but it seemed that only Morgan heard him, because he was the only one who acknowledged that he had said anything, by slightly nodding his head in his direction. "Theseus knows what sort of magical items these creatures have," Arinda continued. "I'd like to be able to open up trade negotiations. They've been cut off for so long that they probably don't even know the types of technology that we possess. Sterilite would probably blow their minds. Our merchant guild could grow rich from this. I want to send a few delegates with gifts to meet with those in the lake, and offer to extend the olive branch to their queen." "I don't know how receptive she will be," Anilla finally spoke. "Perhaps if we send Draken, she will be less skittish. They fear elves." "After what the Emerald Knight did to their god," Clin agreed, and everyone tried very hard to look anywhere except at him. "The destruction of their sacred temple probably does weigh heavily on their minds, yes," Morgan agreed. "We could try returning the stone." "You can have that!" Arinda glared at him, and the fire within her blazed. "When you pry it from my cold, dead hands!" "You can't even use it," Morgan shot back. "You're a fire elf." "Don't tell me what I can and cannot do, old man," Arenda leaned over the table toward him. I am the greatest mage in all of Zeren. I am the chosen child of Theseus, avatar of the gods. I have done the impossible already, and I intend to do it again. I will not lose the water stone. Then you might as well stop playing nice, he hissed back, and declare war. The servant was refilling Clin's glass, and he sipped it slowly. Arenda? He asked, and she turned to him. If you decide to declare war, I'm pretty sure I can wipe them out pretty easily. They're just as scared of— If you put that armor on, I will set you ablaze! Arenda shrieked at him, and a wall of flame surrounded her. Clint shrunk back in fear, so far and so fast that he scooted his chair from the table too quickly, fell, and wound up on the floor, muttering apologies over and over while Morgan beat at the map with a napkin. "Water!" he cried, and a servant came quickly with a pitcher, which he splashed at Arenda's hand and the burning map. She pulled back and stared at them as the fire went out. The silence that surrounded her reeked of embarrassment, and it only served to fuel her rage. She jerked her head to meet Morgan, then Anila, and shrieked, "What the hell are you looking at?" A child throwing a tantrum. Morgan slammed the empty pitcher on the table, and Anila shook her head. "If you can't behave better than this, why don't you go somewhere and calm down? You're just like your father. You're too young for this. Clint, will you please get up? Did you pass out?" He turned back to Arenda. Did he pass out? "I'm fine," Clint said. "I'm just gonna hide under the table and pray for death." "Your child acts better than this." It was unclear who Morgan directed the remark towards. "And she's an infant. Arenda, I swear, hand on a holy text, that the day Bruwana comes of age is the day I poison you." "Don't say things like that," Anila warned, and Morgan's shoulders slumped. "Arenda, you're not ready. I'm not saying this to hurt you. You're good on a battlefield, but you aren't ready for this. You really are not much more than a child." He rested one hand on the table and reached out, gently, to lay the other on her forearm. "I really think that it would be better for you if you let Anila and I handle this." "I am not a figurehead," Arenda explained coldly. "Nor am I a child." Clint had gotten up and straightened his chair, but was back on the floor picking up the pieces of glass. "I don't mean that unkindly," Morgan continued. "You're barely 20. I have seen centuries. I just have more experience. You're still young and brash, and a fire mage with the temper of a fire fist can get real dangerous real fast." "I'm sorry," Clint said from the floor, not expecting anyone to hear him. It startled him that the two faces he could see from where he was kneeling, Arenda and Morgan, were staring down at him as if waiting for him to elaborate, so he swallowed and tried to articulate his thoughts. "About the fire fists. I'm sorry that—" He went to pick up a piece of glass, and a gauntlet formed around his hand and forearm. He trailed off and stared at it. "It thought you were going to cut yourself," Morgan explained patiently. "He knows that." Arenda sounded exasperated. "He's just drunk. He's always drunk." She rubbed at her forehead to massage away the headache that threatened to overtake her. "Anila? I agree. A Draken diplomat would be best. Have them contact the Brigadans and have a suit made for the Queen." "I believe that would be the best course to take, yes," Anila agreed, and asked, "So, are we finished, then?" "I'm finished?" Arenda huffed, staring down at her husband.